approve the agenda for October 27th, 22 meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. John, as well? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, adoption of minutes. Minutes in your package were provided for the meeting on September 28th, our last meeting. Any recommendations in regards to revisions or changes to those minutes? Okay, so I take it is that a move, Joyce?
Yep.
Thank you. And seconded by Rob then, that the minutes of that meeting be for September 28th, 22 be adopted. All in favor? Thank you very much. Any public comments? Steph? No? Seeing none. We'll now move to point 4.1, capital projects verbal update. And Liam, if you could address that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we're skipping over the fire hall now because that is complete and actually operational with trucks in it and everything. A bit of a side note, though, we are applying for grant funding for additional equipment for one of the new fire trucks that's in that new fire hall. So and things are going quite well. Just a quick side note on that too. One of the challenges that we have at the municipality is having enough space for staff. And it's not that we've necessarily increased the amount of staff, but there's always been space problems. And the new fire hall resolves one of those space problems. We never had a place for our emergency program coordinator to sit. And now Christy has a designated full-time space at the hall, which is fantastic. And she's really taken it to make it her own, but she does feel often lonely down there. So never hesitate to stop in and say hi. She swings by here often too. So the multi-use path carries on. You may have noticed that the concrete curbs are being constructed along the northern lane of the trunk road there. And once those are complete, we can begin the asphalt for both the road and the path. And so that now might become a little tricky with the weather. So because we do need a good weather window there. So we're hopeful for making that happen. And the Grafton Road culvert replacement project is complete. We talked about that last time. There is the other large culvert replacement project that's happening on Harding Road, and that I'm not sure if I provided you with an update about the change in approach to that project. So originally we were going to do a box culvert, which is a precast concrete box. They're very good for conveying a lot of water. They're quite good from an ecological perspective. They're generally better for both water conveyance and ecological function than standard corrugated steel pipes. However, due to the concrete strike that occurred in the Lower Mainland earlier this year, all of the concrete projects in the Lower Mainland got significantly delayed, and the supplier ran out of box culverts, and so we had to shift gears and move from a box culvert to a simplified bridge. That may have some impacts on the overall budget. We've yet to see what the end result will be there. But the nice thing with a bridge approach is that it is the best of all of the options in terms of ecological function and water conveyance. And so it is a far better outcome, but it may impact the project in the end. However, though, we did come in significantly under budget with the trunk road culvert replacement, or not culvert, storm drain replacement project. So we're able to make up ground there. The Kobe water treatment plant, there's a recent update on the website as of October 17th, and basically there's a plan fully in place to get the plant operational. However, that it may not still be fully operational until the new year. We're in the process of installing what's called a breakhead tank and replacing some electrical components. Once those two pieces of work are done, we can replace one of the filters which was broken, and then move to commissioning the plant with the public health engineer, medical health officer from Vancouver Coastal. So fingers crossed that will be happening early in the new year. I see Councillor Morris has a question.
I got a question asked of me after somebody read the news release. The broken filter, is that at our expense, or is it under warranty, or did it come broken and being replaced by the supplier, or?
It's something that we have not reached full agreement on with the supplier. So the supplier points finger at us, saying because we had significant water hammer in the system, which is basically often caused by an airlock within the system or some other malfunctioning of the pipe structure, creating a hammering like motion. You know, our design engineers would argue that the water hammer wouldn't have been sufficient to necessarily fracture the ceramic filter. So it's a bit of an argument as to who's responsible for that. But at the end of the day, we're just moving forward, trying to get it fully operational.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Community center is approaching 20% completion at this stage, and so we had the large concrete or suspended slab concrete pour completed, and the final slab pours are soon to happen. I think that's similar where we were standing last time we met, but the essentially all of the necessary work for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing is in place for those final pours to occur. And once that's done, then we'll be able to move to the vertical portion of the project, which is the exciting portion. We can start to see walls and columns go up. One of the big challenges that we have been asking for a solution, or what the approach will be, is how to ensure that some of the highly visible wood columns will be protected prior to getting the roof on. So we have some, they're glulam columns and glulam beam structures, which will be really beautiful in the interior space, but with the weather being such it is now, you don't want to be exposing those. So they can shrink wrap them. They've said that they're going to keep them in a warehouse until they're ready to go, but I still haven't heard, okay, well, exactly how are they going to erect them, because I don't think they could erect them and get a roof on in the same day. And so that's something that we're trying to get clarity from the vendor as to how they're going to protect those architectural elements that are very aesthetic. And so we're into those types of logistics of the project, trying to make sure that as it goes up, elements that require protection are getting that level of protection. We're also, this isn't so much about construction itself, but we have engaged a subcommittee from the Hearth that has been put together to help with more specific elements of the facility once it's up and running. And we're really tapping into their expertise around the operational side of the facility. And there's one fellow in that group who is director of Oh, I'm forgetting the name of the theater in the Lower Mainland.
Presentation House
Thank you. Yeah. And
used to be on the board.
right. And his name is Kim, and he's been really helpful. And he's provided Jillian and Jamie and Kat from our shop have all gone to their facility for detailed tour, and there'll be probably second or third visits even. And so we're really starting to dig into the operational details of how we're going to actually run the facility once it's actually built. So
Just a quick point, Liam, on that.
Yeah.
It's my understanding, I think, that this committee would be looking at the operating budget for the community center and would be addressing that in due course. That was something I think that was scheduled for a future date as part of that. So I guess the point of reference, this committee has some involvement in that, in the overall process, I guess, as I understood it. Is that correct?
yeah, and that full operating budget hasn't been finalized, but we're definitely happy to bring it here for input. And we also, in part of the operational plan, is hammering out what our joint operating management committee will look like. So there's going to be a committee between ourselves and the Hearth, and what are the roles and responsibilities of each of those organizations? To what degree do we see the Hearth participating in some of the operating elements, and that will impact the actual operating budget too. So
yeah, and as I said, that may be part of the overall consideration of that over itself. Before I go to Rob and John, I just want to acknowledge that Michael's joined us. Welcome. And Rob, please.
Yeah, just on that, sort of dovetailing on what you were just saying there, Liam, I do think it's very important that the municipality is very involved in the operating of that facility. I'm assuming it's going to be Jillian that's going to be the point person on that. So I want to make sure that we're not sort of outsourced, that other groups are doing that. Like, I know there's an agreement there and we live by that agreement, but I think it's important that, that this is a community center run by,
Exactly. So the municipality is the owner and operator, but at the same time, we don't have the expertise in terms of the theater side of it, and that theater space. And so we do have the expertise in terms of like the community program and recreation programming and all of that, but we want to tap into that community of experts that know how to run the theater. And and that's why it's important to get the joint management committee terms of reference right and figured out. And with certainty, we're going to need additional staff support to run the facility too. So we can't expect Jillian to be responsible for managing that entire facility. And all the way along, the project always envisioned that there would be a facility manager. And so we're going through the process of looking at like the detailed day-to-day operation and who's responsible for what, and that'll all be built into the updated business case and plan that we'll bring back here.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you're on that joint agreement, because I think if we do that correctly, we'll save a lot of headaches going down the road. So yeah, Fred, I also had something on the multi-use path. Can I throw that in now, or do you want to do that at the end?
Maybe is that okay with you, Liam? It's your report.
Yeah. I'll be really quick. Just a sense in the community that people are starting to get frustrated at the timing about it, and I, hey, I get that. So just, I know there's going to be weather logistics, but I hope it's on the front burner on that one, to get it in whenever we can. And also, like, I was there yesterday, and it's great to see the curbs and all that in place and that physicality, but just keeping that extra eye on the niceties and making it look nice and all that kind of stuff. With the upper part, I was a bit surprised at the rubber bolts at the end of the day. Like, I just, it surprised me, but it's like it's going to be an exciting project, and I just want to make sure that the last little bit, which is almost the most important bit, gets done really nicely. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the community center. John?
Thank you, Fred. Just exploring the notion that this committee would be involved in the budget process for the community center. Has council previously authorized that we would be part of the budget process?
I think that's in our oversight description in our terms of reference, John.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just,
we don't approve it. We're part of that consultative process.
Reviewing it, I would say,
And review it. Yeah, we may have recommendations, for example.
okay.
Same for the business case.
And this was because the community center was a special project for the community rather than, say, us having oversight on the detailed budget for the fire department.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because I would hate to, year on year as they're going through budget processes, have the step of coming to us always in the way or maybe delaying things.
Yeah, I would never visualize that at all. Just
Okay.
this is really as part of the impact of the construction, and it is a new project on the island.
And a big,
I would like to say, John, I really appreciate your questions there, because I too don't want to get in the position of having to bring forward things that may be sort of overkill. But I think the idea here is this is more the business case than the actual budget. This is like how we're going to operate the facility, and that includes like the financial plan of that operations. But I don't envision, correct me if I'm wrong, Chair, but I don't envision bringing forward the annual operating budget of this facility to this committee.
No.
Okay.
No.
however, as a
Not at all.
line item in the budget, it might.
It'll be a line item in the big budget, but
Yeah.
not.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be part of the normal course of business.
Yeah.
As we do with the budget overall. But this is sort of as you said, the business case going in. So that would be that. Allison, do you have anything else? Your hand's still up?
Two things, I guess, is just thinking about the composition of the management committee, and somebody has to be there that definitely is wearing a recreation hat.
Yes.
A single purpose, and I'm thinking of a particular individual. And then the other is the multi-use path. I think I've got the right terminology. Is it tactile strips, those little dot things are those going in all the crosswalk ramps? So down the strip, down the cove where they're putting in the little approaches to the crosswalks.
I guess I'm not sure this is our committee's area.
No, it's
but
just a question.
now it's going to carry
came
on.
up.
I don't know if we have tactile strips in the multi-use path.
Yeah.
Thank you. Back to Liam, please. Is there anything further?
Yeah, just on the multi-use path, though, we are applying for funding for the next phase. The next phase is from Artisan Lane towards Charlie's Lane. We like the funding program that we're applying to requires detailed design. We don't really have the level of detail that the funder may be looking for, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. We have an indicative design and probably Class D estimates. They may be looking for more accuracy than that. But it is, we're hopeful, and because it would be a really exciting portion of the project. The funding, if we were successful, would not likely get us all the way to Charlie's Lane. It would like get us part way. The section to Charlie's Lane alone is probably over $1 million, just because the terrain is so steep and difficult. But it's pretty exciting, so we're looking at that. And then the wastewater treatment plant continues to be underway. The current project schedule is looking like that we should be complete early in the new year with final commissioning and testing such that we would be able to do capacity assessments in March and looking at what is the updated new capacity of the plant after all that work is done. And there, this is the library cultural corner project. I kind of skipped over that. There was some significant delays with new roads construction that aren't really well justified, but that's why the project has stalled and we don't yet have the roof on the pavilion or some of the, there's a couple of covered seats in the back behind the library and the lawn area that have not yet been finished either. There was, it took them 3 tries to get the wood beams to the right length and size, which is really unfortunate and does not bode well in terms of New Roads being a vendor that I would turn to quickly again in the future. It's not a complex project, and so it seems a bit odd to me that they would have such trouble getting the beams right. And so, but we are hopeful that it will be roofed and sheltered in place by the end of the calendar year. So fingers crossed that that'll be complete by then.
Okay.
And that's it for my capital.
Thank you, Liam. I appreciate that. Any questions for Liam? Hearing none. We'll now move on to point 5, business arising from the minutes. 5.1, investment update. Kristen, you can come forward on that. And in your package, she provided information with regards to the MFA Pool Investment Fund, and that was provided. I take it for reference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we discussed at our last meeting in September, we identified the importance of ensuring that we really take a more proactive approach to monitoring and managing our investments that are held at the MFA. So again, the global economic factors, including, inflation and supply chain issues and interest rates, are continuing to impact our investments at the MFA. So most of our funds, about 5.8 million of them, are invested in the MFA short-term bond fund. And that fund is continuing to experience unrealized capital losses that we believe that we'll expect to be able to mitigate, providing we can continue to hold on to that investment and get through this period of uncertainty. So in the meantime, we do have another fund held at the MFA, $2.5 million in the MFA money market fund. I did proactively take some action on that fund, and I moved it out of the MFA. I cashed in all of those units. There's no underlying unrealized losses associated with that. It's just a money market fund. And year-to-date return on that fund is just under 1%. Mm-hmm. I had discussions with our manager at First Credit Union and the manager there, and they've established a high interest savings account for us, which is pegged to the high interest savings account at Scotiabank. So it is earning 3.8%. So I cashed in all of those money market funds and have deposited it into that high interest savings account. And with the increase in the rate yesterday, another 0.5%, I'm expecting that interest rate to go up to 4.3. So really trying to make the most of the money that we have in our bank account while we have it, and try to make sure that we can earn as much as we can on it and take advantage of these higher interest rates at that point. So I think that's a positive. It keeps our funds as liquid as possible so that we have the money when the bills come due for these capital projects. And yeah, I think we're earning a great rate. So I'm really happy to report that.
Good. Yeah, that's great.
And I don't have any other news to inform you about with regards to our investments.
Any questions for Kristen on those points?
No, it sounds like you're on a good track there, Kristen, for what I hear people are doing as well. So that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you are taking a more active position in that. I think that's excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then, please, to new business. 6.1, operating expenses, September 30th quarterly report. And that was also provided, I believe, in your package.
Yes.
And Kristen, if I could actually have you report on that, please, or provide your comments.
Certainly. So this is a sort of a comprehensive operating fund to show our year-to-date position versus budget and where, given our best guess, where we're going to end up by year end. I'll just take a moment to speak to a few of the larger variances from budget. You can see we probably will do about $43,000 better in our sale of services. Those are things like our development fees and our recreation, anything that we are providing services to the public. So yeah, we believe that our biggest one there is our recreation revenue. We believe that we'll probably come in about $25,000 over budget, that we probably were a little too conservative on that estimate for this year. So that's good news. And our business licenses, we probably will end the year about $10,000 more in business license revenue than we had in budget. So that's some good news there. Our grant estimate is, I've put it in lower. That's relating to the construction of the community center. When I did the budget back in the spring, I really didn't know which fiscal year the majority of the expenses would land in. So I do believe that more of them are going to be pushed out to fiscal year 2023. So as a result of that, our grant revenue that we'll be reporting to fund those expenses is going to be under. So it really just relates to those capital projects. Donations is higher. We received a $50,000 donation early this year, which was a contribution to the housing fund. And we've also received about $25,000 or $30,000 in community center donations this year. So we had taken we like to take a conservative approach to the revenue and end up in a better position. So that's good news. Other revenue, I'm projecting that will be about $77,000 down from budget, and that's actually relating to the unrealized losses on the investment, and that's I'm putting in a provision there because they are unrealized losses, but we do have to actually book them. I think that in one of the reports I submitted earlier, I tried to provide the committee with kind of an explanation of how those unrealized losses actually impact our returns. Use of statutory reserves, that has to do with the savings on some of the capital projects. So our storm sewer project is coming in much lower. We're not going to have to dip into our reserves so as much as we had anticipated to fund it. So there's some savings that we expect to be experiencing there. On the expenses side, I do believe that most of our operating departments will come in very close to budget. There's a couple of line items that are bigger variances that I can speak to. Fire and emergency has a $249,000 expected underspend. That's related specifically to provisions for grant expenditures that were put into the operating budget that would have had funding to pay for them. Aaron at this point hasn't heard that those grant applications were approved. So in that case, we wouldn't be going forward with those proposed expenditures. So that's where the big $250,000 savings is showing up there. Yeah. What else is something? Yeah, I think most of them are just sort of
they're not significant.
And they're not really significant. There's nothing big that I could really point to.
Okay.
Contributions to statutory reserves. We have a $15,000 contribution that came from the Grafton Lakes project for some parking lot work that'll be going into the roads and infrastructure statutory reserve, and that 73 contribution to non-statutory reserves, it actually relates directly to those donations that the 50,000 went into the housing reserve, and the extra community center donations are going into the community center fund. So overall, one last thing, we are a little bit higher on budget from debt servicing. That's because we did use interim financing for constructing the last of the fire hall. So with the variable interest rate rise this year, we ended up spending more on interest than we had anticipated. So overall, I do anticipate that will come in very close to budget, or perhaps with a little bit of a surplus, but I just wanted to let you know that I believe that everything's on track, and there's nothing at this point that I feel that I need to raise or bring to the attention of the committee on the operating side of the budget.
Thank you. Any questions? Allison? You're on mute, please. There you go.
The strategic planning one, most of the money is going to get spent in the last 3 months. So I was just wondering, are there big projects that we plan to do that we're not? I mean, there's another sort of $100,000 that's going to get spent between October and December. And I didn't know what the special things were that we hadn't accomplished.
Oh, there was a $75,000 expenditure in the budget for the asset management work that's going on. So we have, we've just signed the contracts with the software company. So I believe those bills started, there's an implementation program. So we'll incur additional expenses over the course of the rest of this year. But yeah, I do believe that we will be accessing the most of that budget between now and December 31st, but it relates to the asset management.
Okay, that was
because Ian, did you have something to add? I just saw you come off mute. I was just curious.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say exactly what Kristen said.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, thank you for the reporting, Kristen. Any other questions before we move on to the next point?
Well, since asset management's been brought up, that's something that falls under our sort of keep an eye on. What sort of time frame are we looking at to actually get a plan?
That's something that I could, I need to have a conversation with Patrick more to just develop a timeline, and I could bring that back to our next meeting in December.
Okay, that could be identified to come back to the meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, because that would be fine as far as I'm concerned. Any other comments on that?
Just adding to that, we're just getting the software contract signed, and there'll be a period of training, bringing the team up to speed with the software. And then it's not the type of thing where we're going to all of a sudden have a plan in place. It'll be an iterative process where we'll start with one asset class or category and then basically build out from there. Patrick's already done a ton of work on culverts. Very exciting, I know. But
and expensive.
And expensive, yes. And so then that was, we sort of agreed that was an easy place to start with our 384 culverts, and then we expand out from there. So I think Kristen's right. We'll be able to come back with a little bit more of a schedule as to how we see that all unfolding, but it's the kind of thing that'll probably take a couple of years before we have a full-blown asset management strategy in place.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I guess my only comment is that maybe we could identify milestones or something like that as it goes forward with the project. That way, you don't have to get as specific around, dates and times and deadlines and stuff, but just the steps, and that will be identified going forward.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on that?
Just on the culverts, I think we're on a really good track with that, and it's going to take years, but at least we're going in the right direction. So I'm really glad to see the movement on that. And it's not super exciting, although I like seeing them getting put in place every time. I go down there. I was down with the guys a little while ago, crawling through one. So, but it's we're in a good track from where we were a year to 2 years ago. So, really happy to see that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Kristen. We'll now move on to capital projects. 6.2.
Yep, this is the same capital capital project report that I brought to the committee at last month's meeting. Just updated with some new numbers based on some additional work that's been completed. So again, everything looks on track. I don't have any concerns or any projects are wildly over budget or anything that I feel that needs to be brought to the attention of the committee. We did take some of the savings from the storm sewer project. We took $81,000 in savings of that and rebudgeted it to complete a hikers trail parking project that has been completed. So that's great to see that trail access parking project completed with existing budgeted funds. So that was good.
Okay, thank you. Allison?
My squeaky wheel here.
Yeah.
I have real trouble. So all of these capital projects have been funded through reserves or grants, correct?
Yeah,
Or
I
capital
don't have
replacement
anything
and
funded
renewal.
here through, the only thing that would come through operating are the part of the storm sewer replacement funds that's being funded from the TransLink operating and maintenance funds.
Yeah, but that's it again, it's sort of a
Oh,
special
sorry, a grant. Yeah, yeah.
reserve. Yeah. So turnout gear, computer IT, and library to me are annual expenditures, and they should be funded out of tax revenue.
Library
not
is.
the reserve.
Library is. Turnout
Well,
gear
there's
is
their
funded
book.
from the fire department reserve.
It shouldn't be. It should be because it's an annual operating expense. I'll be fighting you on those three all the way along. And
Yeah,
at the library, yeah.
I think Allison, it's something, it's come forward previously, so.
Yeah, I just think it's something we need to think about. There's certain annual expenses that individually are fairly small.
Mm-hmm.
A piece of turnout gear is only, a couple of $1,000s maybe. And so all that stuff, and it happens every year, there should be an operating expense line for that stuff. I mean, you can call it capital because it's quote an asset, but that capital should be funded by tax.
I would suggest that it is, in that it is, there's a dedicated contribution to that fund. I mean, and providing that dedicated contribution to that fund is more than what you're pulling out of it, and you're effectively putting away the savings and putting more money into the cupboard year after year, then that's what's happening. So,
well, if we were putting $30,000 a year into the fund plus an amount for future trucks,
yes,
then it might be okay, but we're not. We haven't been doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that that's how the long range financial planning piece needs to look.
Okay.
But you do want to put those contributions into your reserves, and then you want to fund them from your reserves, because sometimes the contributions here and sometimes it's here, and you don't want your operating budget to be
don't have a
fluctuating.
problem with that if that's the way you're going to do it, but that's the way it's been done.
Okay, well, that's the way I'm going to do it.
Thank you. Joyce?
Just want to comment, as a previous bureaucrat in the provincial government, I like having to draw it out of reserves because it forces the operations people to demonstrate need. If you put it into operations, the tendency is to simply apply cost of living to the operations budget, and it goes up year after year, and it's dangerous. So I like the need for defense, and the fact is these may be minor assets, but they're still assets. So, if we need to put more into the funds, and that's the reason for Allison's concern, well, let's deal with that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anything else on that? I think there's nothing further on the capital projects. We'll move to 6.3. Kristen, you're on. It just keeps rolling. 5-year financial plan development update, please.
I'll just take a couple of moments to talk about where we're at with that. It's going to take some additional time this year, given that we have this new council. We have a couple of strategic planning meetings scheduled with the new council, which will very definitely have the opportunity to inform our financial plan development. That being said, we can still, and we are working through our just ongoing operational budget. So we will have something ready to bring forth to the finance committee for our December meeting. It's not going to be anything, I think, that is finalized, given that council won't have an opportunity at that point to really put their stamp on it, or to come up with their strategic plan that's going to inform that. But at this point, we need to accept some assumptions into that development of that operating plan. Several factors are going to inform that. So most importantly, what inflation factor we should be using for next year. I understand that Metro Vancouver has used an inflation factor of 6% for next year, which is very high and shocking. We also have a union agreement, which will it currently expires December 31st. So we are waiting to be served notice to begin bargaining with our union. So next year's operating budget, just what I want to say is that it's going to look very different. It's also going to have this new piece of the community center operations, which is something completely new too. So it's going to look different. And again, I will have something more useful to bring forward for you at our next meeting, so that we can start having that conversation.
Okay.
And start discussing what a reasonable tax rate increase is going to look like for next year.
Yeah, just a quick question. I appreciate, again, the report. Is there a scheduled strategic planning session for the new council coming up fairly soon, I guess, obviously?
Yep, we have 2 dates.
Just so I understand.
So the Chair, there's quite an ambitious schedule of orientation, and it's effectively the next over the next month. There's over 30 hours of workshop orientation scheduled with them, and so that includes well, that also includes their inaugural meeting. So that's only about a couple hours, and
Yeah.
we have a full day orientation with them just on operations. We have a legal seminar orientation, a Robert's Rules, and a
finance, a dedicated finance too.
Yeah, and a responsible conduct and budget orientation, capital project orientation, and that's outside of the strategic planning. Basically, we want to get them all oriented to everything that's going on, or as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then we have strategic planning scheduled for them mid-December, and then early in the new year, because that will feed right into the budget cycle.
Yeah.
And so we want to hopefully get a strategic plan, at least a fairly final draft, if not a final version, prior to initiating the full budget process with them.
Good. I just wanted to confirm that, because that obviously those strategic priorities are established under the planning process are pretty important to this committee when we look at matters. So thank you very much. Michael?
Fred, I just come directly from a meeting before this, where for the upcoming calendar year, we actually put in an inflation factor of 7.5%. So I quite understand why the municipality would work on 6.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anything further, Kristen?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so.
Thank you. We'll now move on to, I don't think there's any information items attached to this meeting. 6.4, proposed move to a closed meeting. And I will read I guess I have to read this, don't I? If I keep, yeah. Okay, that the Finance Advisory Committee moved to a closed meeting pursuant to sections 91C and K of the Community Charter. 90.1A, a part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter is being considered relates to or is one of the following: C, labor relations or other employee relations; K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at the preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the community, of the municipality, if they were held in public. If I could please have a mover for that.